The pundits like to slice and dice our country into red states and blue states.
The time for empty talk is over.
You don't get to do anything you want to.
But
millions of people have got to stand up and demand that we have a government that represents all of us, not the 1%.
Do not allow anyone to tell you that it cannot be done.
Welcome to Kleptocracy Podcast, Episode 5. My name is Tom, the Stink Bomb.
And I'm Jay. I can't follow up to that. That's just too...
It's too good.
That's top tier.
Top tier. Talk about some of the news of the week. Some things we got here. We got the Pelosi Tesla stock. We got a mandatory anti-communism education bill in the Washington state. We got the GameStop stonks, which is pretty important right now. And then we have...
Or as I like to call it, GameStonks.
GameStonks. And then we also have Janet Yellen, the Secretary of Treasury, has taken over $800,000 from Robinhood's parent company. So, is there anything else on the agenda? Anything you wanted to touch on before we get into the first one?
I just wanted to give an update on the stimulus checks, because from the sounds of it, there's going to be about 10 Republicans working with Biden's administration to water down an already deteriorated and watered down bill. A lot of economists have already said that this $1.9 trillion bill doesn't go far enough, especially, you know, in the juxtaposition to other countries, developed countries, with their economic relief. So basically they want to try to gut like childcare, I believe state funding, some of the PUA, like the unemployment, and basically like when you have someone that's already closer to being a Republican like Joe Biden, and then you take a bill and then you worsen it. It's just, I think it's a fatal flaw and a mistake. If the Democrats don't seize the opportunity they have, I mean, they need to put pressure. They need to like go to Joe Manchin's state and threaten to primary him, you know, because I mean, it's to the point where like he's pulling the Mitch McConnell, you know. And that's the one thing I cannot stand is like he goes back and forth, and it's almost like he's a reactionary, you know, because he's so conservative, Manchin is, you know, and he's pretty unpopular, you know. Yeah, Kyle Kulinski pointed this out too, but like they should just do a reconciliation, excuse me, to pass like any stimulus, economic relief. You know, we have 100,000 people dead in just the month of January alone. I think the states need funding, especially for hospitals and workers on the front line. We need hazard pay. The fact that they said that they would send $2,000 out the door the next week if they won, and there's video evidence of Warnock and Ossoff, and now they want to take that $1,400. Even though that shouldn't even be $1,400, but you can look at the infographics, like I said before on the last episode. But now they want Republicans, about 10 of them are going to meet with Joe Biden's administration, and they want to cut it down to $1,000. So, that's where we're at right now.
It's because people are concerned with the national debt,
except for when it comes to tax cuts from 2017.
Well,
then they don't care.
Well, they needed those tax cuts to buy more yachts.
they need to give tax cuts and deregulate. They had to. Deregulation, trickle down economics. It totally comes into fruition. It definitely is not a fallacy.
It has,
Definitely not.
it's definitely been working the past 30 years. It works great. What are you talking about? Yeah. And speaking of deregulations and stocks, it's a good what's the word I'm looking
Segue.
for? Segway, which is an electric vehicle. You know what else is an electric vehicle? Tesla. Look at now, that's a segue. Nancy Pelosi.
No, that's a Tesla.
Owns like a bunch of Tesla stock. Well, okay, she doesn't. Her husband does. Okay, so
Same with Dianne Feinstein, I believe, too.
yeah, and so their husbands do. So it's not a conflict of interest. But isn't it kind of a conflict of interest? What isn't that like kind of an
insider trading with information that you get?
Yeah.
Like, don't you think that should be outlawed like any other developed country? Like, as far as I'm concerned, a lot of salaries of, those in Congress, whether it's the Senate or the House, a lot of them make up to north of $200,000. They make over 180,000. To me, that's a lot of fucking money. I don't know about you, but I don't really think that that's an excuse to take any lobbyist or corporate PAC or super PAC money.
Nancy Pelosi doesn't tell her husband about anything that's going on with regulation bills or anything to influence him into buying any or selling any. Don't worry. Like, bullshit. Like, we know you do. If you get insider,
she has over $100 million net worth, but you can't actually find the numbers to disclose it. But she has made they did a breakdown on this. I think it was in 2006. I don't know if it was 60 Minutes, but a large media company, one of the segments, on national news, and this was over 10 years ago. And they were talking about how she was accepting and selling stock, basically insider trading, and how unethical that was. And this was probably 15 years ago. You can look it up.
She wasn't. Her husband was. So that's the difference. So I just think it's really weird. I think that members of Congress, serving current members of Congress, shouldn't own stock. Their husbands do. Okay, that's a little weird. You know what I mean? Come on. I mean, it's whatever. I mean, that's the whole point of a lot of people going into politics is to enrich themselves and gain power and wealth. And
to become opportunists.
Yeah,
that's such a bullshit excuse when you're making almost $200,000. I mean, that's just
you can't buy a plane.
Oh, and healthcare. Oh, they get public, taxpayers' money that subsidizes healthcare for them. That's okay too.
But you can't buy a plane with $200,000 a year, and they really want one.
But how does Cuomo get a cut? Medicaid, social programs against the poor. How else is Cuomo going to do that? And it's funny because I see a lot of people praising him, at least CNN and the new, a lot of with his brother. That's the host there, obviously. But I don't watch CNN, but I just find that funny.
Not propaganda or anything.
There's so much gaslighting, especially when it comes to Chris Cuomo. It's despicable because to me he's botched it by cutting social programs in the middle of a pandemic, especially healthcare, Medicaid. That to me is that's so unethical and cruel. But they're sitting there praising him, dude, your brother sucks.
Yeah. They were really working hard to try to prop him up for a 2028 or whatever. It's hey, he's gonna run for president next time. Him and Mayor Pete are gonna run.
Yeah, they're trying to groom them basically for a presidential run. But Nina Turner is trying to get into Congress too, for Ohio, I believe.
I would like to see that, but
she's running for as a representative, I believe, in one of Ohio's districts. I don't know which exact district, but that's one of the few politicians I'd actually donate money to. I'm not a big fan of doing that after, you know, seeing Bernie's trajectory of his campaign. But yeah, that's I like to see. I'd like to see her win that, you know, and there's a possible presidential run, you know, in the future if she does in 2024.
One argument for the members of Congress owning stock is shouldn't, or elected officials be more obligated to own stocks to help promote and secure the success of our economy. Thus, if they have a vested interest, then they're going to really want to open up and deregulate to make sure those businesses succeed, which thus helps the country succeed.
But not really if you have, like, you know, loopholes and tax havens and offshore bank accounts. But yes.
Yeah, but it helps the country because it increases the GDP of the country.
But not GDP per capita when you break it down. Shh.
We don't talk about that, okay?
Just the GDP. Just the GDP.
The normal people aren't supposed to know the tricks of the wealthy.
Don't tell the normies. Don't tell the normies.
The BK randoms aren't supposed to know.
Yeah, don't tell the BK randoms. Get them off my team.
Talking about the normies knowing the tricks of the wealthy, let's talk about GameStonk.
Yeah, speaking of BK randoms and gaming, yeah, you know,
Talking about some GameStonks, Reddit, this whole Reddit GameStop stock fiasco. The whole idea of apps like Robinhood and Acorns and all these other ones, their whole idea is to help the democratization of finance, right? And
democratization when you have stock buybacks for CEOs.
And so these Reddit users, have found a way. Basically, what's happening is wealthy Wall Street peoples have been short selling stock in GameStop and various other companies to recoup investment losses. They will plummet the stock and let the company go bankrupt to make a bunch of money off it. That's kind of their idea. Well, these Reddit users have decided they're going to do the opposite, long selling instead of short selling. So they're going to hold on to it and raise the price up. And thus, those people who wanted to sell it are just like, oh no, now I can't sell my shares. They've lost something like $70 billion since this whole fiasco started. And by fiasco, I mean, obviously, working class revolution, but it's whatever. In Wall Street,
working class solidarity with the Elon Musk fanboys, and then you have the left cheering on working class
bros and these Elon bros, and everybody, users named Potato in my ass and things like that.
But the Warren bros and the snake emojis, they're not a part of this.
And Wall Street's pissed. They are really mad. I saw some things on our establishment media, CNN, MSNBC, whatever, Fox, basically saying that it's Russia. Russia's doing this, and then Russia's manipulating the everything. It's not working class people in America. It's somebody else's fault, when it's obviously normal people who got their stimmies and are just screw you, guy. You're going to destroy our country and you're going to get a bailout. And
a lot of them, it's their life savings though too. Yeah. It's not even just your stimulus for $1,200 over 9 months ago and the $600 that you just gave. You know what? I'm sorry. I hope more people do.
Yeah,
purchase stock and hold on to it.
And
sorry, continue.
These Wall Street people, your mainstream media people, Republicans, and quite a few Democrats want the government to take legal action against the Redditors who are capitalizing off of this loophole that, of course, has really benefited the wealthy for 30, 40, 50, basically since Wall Street's been around.
Yeah, they've exploited this loophole. I mean, they've exploited this for such a long time that it's, to me, it's really revealing how the fact that you have these capitalists, the outcry, they're just basically sniveling and whining and detesting the fact that they got outflanked. Period. I mean,
Yeah,
that's really what happened.
They got played at their own game. They played themselves, you know, and they're mad about it. They're losing a bunch of money, and they're calling for more regulation of the financial sector.
Which is ironic because they would be the last people to ever advocate for any such measure.
They want that free market, open market. They're all for that. And then now when it's starting to work,
and it's funny.
People,
it's funny when you see like the neoliberal tendencies of advocating and promoting a free market and the visible hand. Well, number one, that's a fallacy, but number two, we don't even have a true free market. It's socialism that the Fed and the Treasury, they give all these loans, these bank loans that are bought out anyway by the federal government that ends up giving them giant. It's almost like essentially like subsidizing and a form of corporate welfare that's just being looted, the entire treasury just being looted by these corporations.
Isn't that what communist states do?
Yeah, it's certainly not what welfare states do. So, I mean,
it's weird. It's like a weird, like, it's a corporate welfare, not social welfare.
It's like a crony welfare. Yeah, it's like
oligarchy. It's really what it is.
It's
and
it's a kleptocracy.
Interesting. Oh, he said it. It's that meme, when
he said it. He said it.
Meme of him pointing when they say the name of the anyway. And I just find it very funny that they're getting outplayed and they're losing something like $70 billion and they're mad and they're upset and they want people to step in. And Robinhood literally like stopped people from buying it. They went in.
Yeah, they deleted. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
They deleted buying anything. They're just like, you can't buy AMC, BlackBerry, GameStop stock anymore. You can still sell it, but you can't buy it. And that's literally breaking their own terms and conditions. They're under a class action lawsuit right now because of that. And
Google, yeah, go ahead. Elaborate on that.
Over 10,000 one-star reviews from their Play Store of Robinhood. And
I thought it was 100,000. Was it 100,000 or 10,000?
10,000. And it's
still a lot.
Their claim for doing so was by all these people coordinating together to give it a one-star review. It's an illegal manipulation of that.
It's funny. I don't think I've ever seen this is why when you put your faith in an oligarchy and Silicon Valley, and just the tech industry, it's like, that's just not being objective. That's just clearly bias, a clear bias. I don't understand. Why don't you go to every other one-star review that apps have, had a poor rating? Go on to Yelp. Why don't you go onto Google Play Store and just, decipher why this? Why specifically this app, Google? Exactly.
We know why. And their language they used was this is an illegal manipulation of this market on our Play Store. And it's like, well,
it's a form of censorship. It's bullshit.
Yeah. Well, isn't wealthy people telling Robinhood, hey, stop this trading, stop this happening, we're losing a bunch of money? Wouldn't that also be illegal manipulation of the market? It's just like, come on. It's unbelievable. It's really obvious now, in my opinion, the way I look at it now is the curtain's been open. We see the wizard behind the curtain now, and all this corruptions that people have suspected for 30, 40 years has really been exposed now. The wealthy have been exploiting this type of shit for decades, and now it's really obvious, and they're trying to cover their asses by removing reviews and blocking people from buying this, and it's unbelievable. I guess there are some cases of Robinhood actually selling certain shares of GameStop and AMC without users knowing of it to try to recoup some losses for their higher end investors. And I'm just like, are you fucking kidding it? It's unbelievable.
How is that? Yeah, how is that even legal?
It's like when,
first of all,
Wells Fargo decided that they wanted to open bank accounts in users' names without telling them, and credit cards in people's names without telling them.
Yeah,
to raise their own stock price, and then ruined a bunch of people's lives, ruined a bunch of people's credit scores. They're like, oopsie, sorry, we didn't know that.
Was that before or after Dodd-Frank though?
Yeah, I think that was
before, right?
But Nonetheless, you know what
Its
you're
point
doing.
still stands. Yeah, they need to be like, there needs to be like speculation. I should be illegal, like Wall Street
Yeah.
speculation. It is in other developed countries. There's a country in Europe. I don't know if it was France. I think it was, but it was a hangable offense, at one point. So and this was like not even like, I don't know if this was the 1700s, but regardless, the point still stands. Um, it's not outlandish, to put more regulations and to break
No.
up a lot of the private sector, like that has so much capital. Like it's just, yeah, it's just insane,
It's
how
like
much
my
power
father
and
always said, when Wall Street's doing good, Main Street's doing bad.
well, that and like the slap in the face about the stock market is that even if it's doing good, that's not indicative of how the working class is doing.
No, that's not at all.
Especially because stock buybacks used to be illegal until Ronald Reagan allowed CEOs to buy it back.
Remember
And
Reagan?
yeah, exactly, and manipulate a lot of the stock prices. But what's shitty about the stock market is if it's doing bad, people get laid off.
Yeah.
People get fired.
Yeah, because they want
And
to
if
recoup
it's
their
doing
losses.
good, working class and Main Street, they're
It's
still
like
not doing good.
during the pandemic when like everything happened, a lot of these large corporations were like, we have to furlough a bunch of people. Sorry, things are really hard. Oh, we just posted record profits, the best we've ever had in 10 years. It's like, you fucking pieces of shit.
It's like how grocery store chains have been like revoking hazard pay in like Amazon warehouses, and it's like, well, we're still in the middle of the pandemic. I don't think it's radical to ask for a decent wage because you're giving them starving, slave wages as it is. So having Walmart and Amazon and other grocery store chains, even locally here, it's like I've heard some bad things about like Kroger recently too. Like they just haven't been treating their workers very well, like at all. They don't have
Well,
hazard pay. It's pretty unfortunate.
like I saw this thing the other day, this infographic, I guess is the technical term, that said something like the price of a house has gone up 200%, price of college has gone up 300%, prices of cars have gone up like 120%, wages have stayed the same for like 20 years now or something. I'm like, interesting. And people are like, oh yeah, you can totally buy a house on minimum wage if you work, hard and work 2 jobs, if you can buy a house and a new car. And it's like, no, you can't.
Well, and that's part of the problem with Proposition 22 as well. Like that's one thing that's it's an initiative that passed in California. Basically, other states are going to be able to vote on it, but it's just such a bad precedent because like workers that are independent or like on contracts, or self-employed, basically it gives an outing for like Lyft and Uber, who don't even make a profit necessarily, like they're not really profitable, but they get giant amounts of money, like subsidies from the government anyway, I believe.
They create jobs. They're job creators.
Yeah, it's like, well, not only like are they not contributing anything, but at the same time they're at least to the economy, but like they're just over exploiting their workers. And now with Proposition 22, basically they don't have to give them health care, they don't have to give them a minimum wage, and it makes it so they're not considered like I believe part-time. Like it really, the whole the work your own hours, like that whole market has basically just been upside down because it's undermining a lot of unionization and like labor rights.
The whole gig economy, which
The
is
gig economy, yes, that's what I was looking for.
The employees are considered independent contractors. So, and that's why. And so, like, as an independent contractor,
before Proposition 22, like they did millions of dollars into
Yep.
lobbying, and
instead of just paying their workers that.
exactly, and now like their workers won't even, they don't have health care or like they can't like take time off. Like a lot of the workers' compensation, labor rights have just been like stripped and undermined.
That's
Like
the
it's
future of our
just
economy. The gig
that's
economy.
it's so grotesque, dude.
The
Like
new right to work union busting. The new gig economy.
it is.
Yeah.
It draws heavy parallels to that because
I
it's
think
like, and now it's like it makes it harder for them to even like, how do you unionize if you're an independent contractor and you're working under gigs? Like they're trying to make it so they're not like able to even have a labor strike, any unionization at all. It's just like a right to work state would do. You're right.
Well, Amazon uses the Pinkertons to walk around Amazon warehouses and intimidate people and hear about unionizations.
Well, yeah, they also have like positions that they've hired in the past. I can't remember if it was assistant manager, but like, yeah, I was doing a report on it. Like, and they basically would spy and surveil like their own employees to overhear and eavesdrop anything mentioning, like they'd have to go out of their way and report anything of any unionization at all. And I'm like, it's illegal to union bust like that. And Elon Musk has been guilty of doing it as well. And that's why I'm so sick of his fanboys like depicting him as some progressive when he's really not. He's no different than
he was doing business.
Yeah.
It's
business for his own self-interest.
Ruled that workers have a right to collective bargaining. That's how unionization works. However, states get by this because we have a dual federalist system, and states get by it by implementing their own right to work legislation in their states.
And that's why right to work states, especially predominantly under red states,
Well,
that's why it's a lot harder.
Right to work state.
Huh?
Our state's a right to work state.
Yeah, but I'm saying predominantly a lot of times it's red states. But yeah, you're right.
Because both sides of the aisle are.
I'm not generalizing. I'm just saying like typically it is red states.
And speaking of red states and red, as in communism, there's a bill in Washington State called it's the SB 5374, Senate Bill 5374. It's a mandatory anti-communism education bill proposed by Senator Honeyford, a Republican. And I find that's such like I saw it and I obviously I just didn't know what to say. I was like, what is a mandatory anti-communism education bill in social studies and political science classes? And it's just, to me, it reeks of McCarthyism. And we all know communism is bad. We know communism is bad. Like, we're not dumb. Like, it's just it's what, like, okay, Boomer, we get it. You're scared. The things are changing, and you're scared.
I'm just sick of like, I don't know, like it just goes back to like generalizing, you know what I mean? Like Karl Marx had a lot of like left ideas that you can't discredit or undermine. Does that make me a Marxist?
Yes.
No. But like, even if you slander and want to call me that, I don't find that offensive. But what I get sick and tired of is like, you don't hear critiques of capitalism, especially when you're learning from textbooks that are Pearson, and a lot of publishers are right wing, you know what I mean? But like, you don't cover the massive genocide of Native Americans. You know what I mean? They don't actually thoroughly go over that. They don't talk about, the Dakota 38. You don't learn about that in school. Right. You don't learn about a lot of things in school.
You don't learn about Black Wall Street burning down.
So like, I'm sick of like, this generation, of course they're going to be a lot more, like radical, but I don't even think what they're wanting is even radical. That's like the sad part.
Regulation.
Like millennials, I think, we got dealt a pretty bad hand, but I mean, Generation Z, they've had a worse hand than you could argue than even we've had, and
they're sick of it. Millennials, Gen Zers, Zillennials, if you will. We're kind of pissed off that we've inherited a dying planet, a dying planet.
and having egalitarian measures is somehow, more equitable measures in our economic system. Like they're going to propose a fucking communist bill, like with bullshit narratives.
People from exploring that type of political ideology. Well, I thought this was America. I thought this was America. I thought we had a right to believe whatever the fuck we want. And I thought it's weird that
That's what I thought, but
it's weird that a Republican who's really all about the whole freedom of speech, all about the freedom of that, who wants to literally stop people from learning about communism. It's like
they want to suppress information.
It's weird.
Which is like a form of oppression by, limiting, like what you want to keep people like, you don't want them to have access to knowledge and resources to like learn and study.
Like fascist and communist regimes do. Weird.
Yeah, it's funny because
slippery slope. That bill's probably not going to go anywhere. It's going to get a committee hearing, because of course it is. But I don't think anybody's legitimately going to vote yes on it. It's Honeyfordism. It's the new McCarthyism. He's a guy. The world is,
and it's funny because it's like, even Richard Nixon, like he came up with the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency. Republicans in a whole nother distant time that you and I never experienced, but they had a lot of issues that were environmentally friendly. You know what I mean? And I don't see really any Republican addressing climate change, carbon emissions, greenhouse gases.
They believe
that's communism. That's communism. I mean, you can't
believe that,
even though fundamentally it's not like at all. Like that has nothing to do.
Well, they believe that it is detrimental to the economy by switching from, and which is a legitimate point. So if we think about it, the oil industry creates millions of jobs from getting the oil, refining the oil, shipping the oil, all that type of stuff. The whole economy is kind of built around oil. And so switching from that source of oil and natural gas to more green energy, you have to basically rebuild your economy, which obviously you need to, especially for the 21st century, because if you're seeing countries like China starting to do it and they're getting ahead, and they're not dependent on foreign oil and they're domestically energy secure, that's really what you want to do. You're going to spend more money in the long run fighting regime change wars to secure your oil and your dependence on foreign energy than you would save money having being domestically energy secure. That's
you have to support Saudi Arabia, even though they're a brutal dictatorship that killed Jamal Khashoggi, and we do weapons deals with them, and they commit genocide basically in Yemen, and it's horrible. But oil.
Yeah. But
and I'm being facetious if anyone can't tell. But yeah, it's just, I don't know. It's not radical to have a federal jobs guarantee. It's not radical to, especially like as automation, in the private sector is going to like render a lot of positions obsolete or antiquated in the future. I don't know. I find it absurd. Like, yeah, I enjoy my cars or my car, but like, in internal combustion engine cars, like I like cars, but like that doesn't mean we shouldn't address our infrastructure. We shouldn't try to offset the carbon emissions. The one thing I am concerned about, is how it affects the working class. The only thing I am afraid of is if they make EVs unobtainable, because there's not really a market for it. Tesla has $80,000 to $120,000 cars.
Some that are cheaper, but nonetheless. So what?
Yeah, like the government fleet proposal, I don't think that's a bad idea. But what I'm
good for Nancy Pelosi.
But for me, yeah, exactly. We'll tie into that. But what I find so infuriating is like, yes, we should absolutely You know, I agree with the government fleet. I agree with that. You know, transitioning from internal combustion engines to EV conversions. That's fine. But what about the working class? What about infrastructure? How are you going to accommodate these EVs on shitty fucking roads? You know what I mean? Because a lot of these electric cars, especially that have like low profile tires, like we should be like a marvel. Like we should be leading and kicking other developed countries' asses with our infrastructure. And it's fucking deplorable, you know? It's like, but we have to give, you know, Wall Street giant bailouts and subsidies. So that's where priorities are.
Yeah, it's more economical to give the wealthy more money than to rebuild crumbling infrastructure, to invest in our schools, in our teachers, in our hospitals, our fire departments, our police forces. Those whatever, don't worry about that. But like, if Elon Musk can buy another 3 jets, then we need to do that. That's more important.
Well, what kind of irritated me is like, and not to defend like, you know, corporations, but like I'm a fan of Toyota, you know, and what I found kind of like infuriating is that the government just fined them like $185 million for late paperwork, for bureaucratic bullshit. And what I find kind of like, what kind of upsets me about it, I'm like, Toyota came out, like they basically came out with a hybrid in the Prius, and that like for almost 2 decades,
They
like, you
license
know,
out to other companies to make hybrids.
right, but that also helps mitigate carbon emissions and greenhouse gases. Like, how can you like that? To me, is not even like that's not even progressive because it's not the same thing as like when was it VW like Volkswagen
The emission
that
handle.
they yeah they deceitfully lied maliciously for their own profit, but then they got out of that because they could pay those fines by investing into infrastructure. You know, that's how they basically got around that, and now they're, you know, going to be in that market for EVs. But it's like, dude, like how can you find Toyota for fucking late paperwork and all this bureaucratic like shit, like that? To me is just, you know, that's not even like an environmentally friendly fine. That to me is just
That's
that's
not
just asinine.
that's not fine. It's
Yeah,
because Toyota is not an American company, and we're all about America first.
we have plants here. Toyota's had plants in Indiana. They're going to have one in Alabama.
They have
They've
Indiana.
had one. They've had one in several states, and they're going to be doing a partnership in Alabama
Yeah, but
in the future.
they're originally Japanese, and so
They're Japanese, but they still contribute to. To me, like I find that I just found that so obscene. It's like for fucking paperwork, not for lying about carbon emissions, which is what actually matters. No, you're gonna fucking fine them for late fucking paperwork. Like that's so bureaucratic and like that's not even progressive in my opinion or left. Like that's just it's not even comparable, you know. It's like what Volkswagen did.
yeah, it's messed up. But you know, on the subject of monies and bureaucracies, Janet Yellen, President Biden's Secretary of Treasury, has taken over $800,000 from Citadel for speaking, similar to how Hillary Clinton did the Wall Street speeches and got a bunch of money. She spoke at Citadel. Citadel is the owner of Robinhood, the stock trading app, and she refuses to recuse herself of advising the president on this whole Reddit GameStop situation. And I just find that just like another ethics concern. Like if you're gonna take, and I'm not, you know, take $800,000 from a company that owns this other company, and then all of a sudden, oh yeah, Robinhood is shutting down buying of this certain thing and blocking this type of stuff. And you're the Secretary of Treasury. It's just it reeks of corruption to me, and I really hate that excuse of. And this is an excuse I've heard. Well, she's pretty competent, and she really knows a lot about that type of stuff, so she really deserves $800,000. Okay, well, it seems like a fucking bribe to me. So
Yeah, you know, well, and Dianne Feinstein's or it's Dianne Feinstein. You know, her husband also purchased stock, you know, with a conflict of interest within, you know, with insider trading. Like, to me, it's just, yeah, like you said, it's just a giant conflict of interest, whether it's Nancy Pelosi or Dianne Feinstein.
Janet
It's,
Yellen, anybody.
it's like, I don't care what partisanship, like, I don't care about tribalism. You know, this is class interests, you know, and that's basically what the stakes are here, you know, like you can't, yeah, and I don't want to hear this class reductionist, you know, bullshit that I hear from centrists and like neoliberals. You know, I've heard that recently, and I only see them use that because that's just a total fallacy. As every time I hear, oh, well, if you're pointing out, you know, the economic and class unity and interests, well, then you sound like a class reductionist. Well, no, I don't, because if you want to fight social and economic issues through class solidarity, that right there proves your point to be a fallacy, right? But anyway, yeah, I mean, to me, it's just a giant conflict of interest. It's just vitiated, you know, rotten corruption in our political system. It's not. I want to look at other developed countries and like I said, Wall Street speculation, it's illegal in other developed countries. This is a conflict of interest. You know, I don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat or a third party. Call it for what it is.
We working class people for a long time have speculated that the wealthy manipulate the economy to make themselves richer, and now it's becoming really hard to ignore that's what's happening.
And they've been deemed with the label of, you know, like conspiratorial or like, you know, like it's hyperbole. Well, no, it's not hyperbolic. And being critical of, you know, the class warfare in this economic system, I don't see any conspiracy.
When you have to work,
it's blatant.
2 jobs. When you have to work a full 40-hour week job plus work in some sort of independent contracting gig job to just get by and pay your bills, that's when, in comparison to 30, 40 years ago, when you could work one job and be able to afford a house and a new car and maybe even possibly send your kids to college. Now, and it's pretty obvious.
You've had the tuition rates, you know, just absolutely skyrocket. You know, the cost of living, like the wages haven't gone up with inflation. And if they had, it'd be north of 27 to $30 an hour, you know, where I think we should be talking about a $25 minimum wage or $20. Like the fact that Biden has $15, what, in 2025? Is that?
Yeah, he'll get
I understand there. Incrementalism, again, why it doesn't, it's a theory.
Is you can't just give people a rise in wages. You can't just make the minimum wage $20. You have to tackle the problems that's happening with everything else going up. You can't just say, okay, here's $20 an hour, it should be fine. No, you have to go in and regulate all these other businesses that are inflating all their prices.
Well, yeah, we need wealth redistribution. And then whether that's in the form of, like I've heard one thing that I thought was interesting was like data monetization, like taxing, how much data can be mined, like from like Google or Facebook, so that it gives them less incentive to actually exploit and, you know, manipulate people's data with algorithms. But, you know, there's a lot of proposals that could address, you know, wealth redistribution. That could be, you know, say if you make over $10 billion, you could have what, a 40 to 60% head tax. I mean, there's other ways. You know, you should make stock buybacks illegal, first of all. You know, even if you just take your example, even if you just start with the $15, you know, that doesn't mean CEOs should be making over $40 million while their workers make starvation wages, you know. So it's just, you know, I'm just saying that to your point, you know, it's just, but 15 doesn't even go far enough. Like look at Seattle, look at LA. You can make $100,000 in LA and still be homeless and still not be able to afford to actually live there, even if you commute there.
No,
Most
they
people can't.
have incubators or whatever they're called there, where somebody will rent a bunk inside of a house for like $1,000 for just a bunk. There's like 30, 40 bunks in this house, and each person is going there for like a 6, 7 month stay for like work. They're paying like $1,000 a month for a bunk.
Yeah.
I'm just like, what the hell is happening? What?
Well, yeah, like I just think that Silicon Valley and the tech industry needs to be broken up. We need antitrust laws, in addition to the wealth redistribution.
You don't trust big corporations to handle everything?
Oh, you're right. I got it. You have to hand it to the invisible hand.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you ever see the movie Idiocracy? It works pretty well.
Yeah, they fed plants Gatorade. They have to get those
Electrolytes. It's what plants need. Everyone knows that. And they had a wrestler as a president. Oh no. I think we're living in idiocracy.
Hey, Jesse Ventura. Hey, let's not slander.
I'm just saying.
All wrestle. I'm just saying. No.
Trump, who is in the WWE Hall of Fame, who became president. Uh-oh. Yeah. We're in trouble. You know what? I'm thinking about this just like they did in Idiocracy. I'm going to go to law school at Costco. Fuck it. Why not? Oh, man. I mean, they're unionized. They have good stuff. Anyway.
Yeah, I actually like Costco.
Yeah,
at least they at least have more equitability, at least how they treat their workers. You know what I mean? Even if you're like a massive scale corporation, a lot of it depends on how you treat your workers. And I mean, like Walmart, for example, they just accumulated a massive amount of wealth. Who was it, from their grandfather or their great grandfather?
Yeah, it's the thing about it though. Is if you're a large, giant, bajillion-dollar corporation and you're like, people like hate you because the way you're treating your workers, then do something. It's a great PR move for you to be like, hey, we're gonna pay you guys a little bit more. Hey, we're gonna, help give you better working conditions. It's better PR move, which is gonna look better for the public to want to go to your business. But when you just refuse to do those things, it continually destroys your name, but you don't care because you're a bajillion-dollar corporation. It's just, you should do it for PR. You should actively try to better the image of your company in every way you can to secure the success and survivability of your company in 30, 40 years. Because believe it or not, I've seen plenty of videos and plenty of documentaries where businesses do the same stuff Walmart's and Amazon's are doing right now, and 60 years later, they're gone. Never hear of them.
It just reminds me of feudalism, man. Or like, especially with like landlords, because like now you have Bill Gates purchasing thousands of acres to get into agriculture. And it's just, I don't know, it's like, that's the part of the fundamental issue though, is like when the Constitution sympathizes with landlords and property owners more than they do for democratic measures, that's one thing that could be potentially
has something to do with the Constitution written by landowners and property owners?
Yeah. I mean, coming here as colonizers, that built this land on slavery and genocide. But yeah, no, not at all.
Oh, man.
But you can't say that because you hate America. So you're not allowed to say that.
Oh, you're right. That's anti-American for me to point out the flaws in the country I love and actually want to be better.
You're killing You're killing bald eagles. Okay, well, you're not allowed to.
A document that needs to evolve as a society itself evolves.
That's what I thought.
I'm sorry. Anyway, let's try to think of some good news that we can drop in at the end. You got any good news at the end for anybody?
No.
Great.
Not really.
Trying to think here. I will leave you with,
except Biden's, first couple of weeks, he's had a couple good policies, but we already disclosed that. So
I will leave it with a quote from a famous philosopher known as Bob Ross.
Oh, I do have one thing, but go ahead.
Today, I think we'll do a happy little painting. Bright and shiny and pretty. Just something that'll make you feel good.
One positive thing I did want to leave off of is, as we all know, Bernie Sanders is the Senate Budget Committee Chairman, and he's been trying to expand healthcare, I think specifically Medicare for all, and pressuring Biden to do that. Although I have my doubts, try not to be cynical, but hopefully in the next stimulus, that could be one of the initiatives and proposals. I'd like to see a policy like that, especially as a lot of states, such as New York, is trying to cut Medicaid, and we'll go from there, So that's all I got for being optimistic.
Yeah, there's always a silver lining. You got to be optimistic, especially now during the pandemic and the idiocracy that we are now living in. But it can only get better from here, right? So that is it.
You know the thing.
Oh, you know the thing. Well, come on, man. That is it for episode 5. We'll see you guys in next week in episode 6. Find us on the YouTube at Kleptocracy Podcast, on Instagram, Kleptocracy Podcast, Spotify, Apple Music, Deezer,
Twitter,
whatever other platforms you're using. The Kleptocracy Pod. Find us, follow us, like us, whatever you do, share definitely, and stay safe and wear a mask.
Cher doesn't listen to us. I'm just kidding.
You better.
Maybe she does. I don't know.
I'll text her. Anyway, bye. Have a beautiful time.
Bye.